So this is a very interesting profile, a very creative one. So the visionary gifts and catalytic gifts are in the lead, along with the idealistic and the aesthetic gifts, and then also the realistic gifts and social gifts primarily. So a group of 6 gifts. So we have the first one, the visionary gifts, a more introverted gift. And we have the second one, the catalytic gifts, a more extroverted gift. So this person is going to be very good at moving both inward to imagination, big picture, visionary ideas, and also outward into possibilities in the world. So very quick to see possibilities, to envision what could be. Both of these gifts are more future oriented. The visionary gifts are more oriented to the very big picture future of life and the world. The catalytic gifts are really much more oriented to specific possibilities, to what could be in the present moment in the current circumstances. Carl Jung said of the visionary gifts, if there hadn't been these gifts, there would have been no prophets in Israel. It's a very big picture view of life. It's just chock full of imagination and creative ideas. It's a nonstop stream of creative vision and inspiration. And the catalytic gifts the same, seeing possibilities everywhere in the world. You can be walking down the street, you see an empty storefront, and immediately you know, with these catalytic gifts, well, that could be a very, very successful Thai restaurant right there. You just know it. You just see that immediately. And then the catalytic gifts also have a lot of energy for seeking to achieve something. So once that vision has been seen, then the catalytic gifts want to go to work on making it real, making it happen. So these 2 gifts we would call receptive. They're very much oriented to receiving visions and ideas. And then the third, the idealistic gifts, would provide a lot of guidance for where that imagination in the first 2 is going to go. So the idealistic gifts over here, the third, they're very much oriented to deeply felt ideals and values that whatever this person does with his imagination will have to be something that brings value to others. It can't just be, creating the new widget or the new toaster. It has to be something that brings some kind of deep, enduring value to others. And so that, in a way, becomes the boundary for this imagination. It won't be enough just to imagine and to create. It will need to be something that which is being created will need to be compatible with these deeply felt ideals. Then the aesthetic gifts, which is in Jung's model, the most sort of magical and mysterious of these 8 gifts. This is the one that will have a high sensitivity to aesthetic detail. Artists are frequently people who carry these aesthetic gifts along with the visionary gifts. So they're very sensitive to aesthetic qualities, to aesthetic differences, but it has another special quality, which is to be somehow oriented to the past in the present. That the aesthetic gifts both experience the present moment and also feel or experience the past somehow in that moment. So people with this gift will often feel a kind of magical connection to the past when they're at a historic site, or when they're at an archaeological dig, or they're walking through a museum, they're seeing sculpture from, the classical age of Greece, and they will feel in a way sort of transported to that time. So it's a connection with the past that has a sort of magical quality at the same time that it imbues the individual with a keenly developed aesthetic sense that certain aesthetic qualities will be important to that individual. So it's really a nice adjunct to the first 2. Each of these is highly creative. The aesthetic gifts are also highly creative in that they're attentive to images and what's being perceived, and attending to those perceptions in a very special way. So far, all of this has been, to some degree, oriented to what could be imagined. Even the idealistic gifts are imagining the heartfelt ideals of what we call the lover heading. And so there's a tremendous amount of energy in this direction on the compass. And what will sort of ground this individual, what will keep this individual minded to what is practically possible and what is practically necessary are these realistic gifts, very much oriented to what's happening now in the world and to the facts of the world, to the practical necessities of the world. And will draw this individual out of that lover heading into an orientation that begins to explore what's possible in the world and to explore the reality of what's out in the world. And the other gift that will also ground this individual in what is sort of socially acceptable, what might create harmony or value for others will be the social gifts. Highly oriented to how other people feel. It's a very empathetic gift, always oriented to how other people are doing, what other people feel, what their values are, what their norms are, always adjusting one's life and response and communication to others, and to being very attentive to who they are, what they value, how they've lived, where they've come from. So we have gifts in this profile that are not just oriented to a high degree of imagination and deep values, but also oriented to exploring the world and attending to people and what they value, and to being very attentive to others. So when you combine this introverted feeling, the idealistic gifts, with the social gifts, you have someone who's highly oriented to a heartfelt way of life, who's highly oriented to relationships with others. And that will play a very big part in this person's life. The aim of the first half of life would be to develop all 6 of these gifts. And in the second half of life, the individual will be naturally drawn to developing more of these conceptual and constructive gifts, which are much more oriented to the head, to logic, to what's rational, what's orderly, what's sort of necessary. The constructive gifts will be very good at creating order in the world. They'll be very good at analyzing data. The conceptual gifts will be very good at thinking about things conceptually, very good at sort of strategic planning and thinking things through in sort of a big picture way. So for this person, it will be much less important to develop these in the first half of life, that the work that this individual will be looking for will be work that must include the visionary and the catalytic gifts, and probably the idealistic gifts. For this person to be happy with that work, these 3 really need to be engaged. And then ideally, for these 3 also to be engaged in that work. And if this person can find the work that engages all 6 of these, it's the most likely path to a highly successful working career. So in summary, a highly imaginative profile going both inwardly and outwardly, very much oriented to heartfelt ideals and values, very, very highly oriented to people, what's valuable for people, and the relationships with those people. So imagination and value are sort of the 2 key words that begin to summarize this total picture.